Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with Peter Teague, President Emeritus of Lancaster Bible College, to discuss leadership principles from his distinguished career as a Bible college president. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Philip Dearborn, President of ABHE, and we are honored to have as our guest this week, Peter Teague. And if you've been around ABHE any length of time, you will certainly recognize Peter, as he has been associated with ABHE and ABHE School for many years. And he has served 5 decades of ministry. And he has made an impact literally on thousands of students and leaders at the various places where he has served. And I've invited Peter in to reflect back over his leadership career and give us some insights from that career, from that journey. And he has a book that's out that's titled Jesus Leader, and we'll put a link to how you can purchase that book in the show description. But Peter, welcome, and thank you for being a guest.
Hello, Philip. It is so good to be with you today. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to talk about some of your leadership journey and some of the things that you raise, some of the stories that you have in the book. Before we do that, so our audience can get to know you just a little bit more, share with us a defining moment, either in your professional or personal life, that kind of shaped who you are today.
I had a devastating fire in the school where I served on July 20, 1990. It was the largest fire in the city up to that point. We were in the media for 6 months. I did 365 media interviews, and we watched God rebuild a school in record time. The community became very supportive of our school. And it really launched me to go on and earn my doctoral degree and launched my career further in biblical higher education.
Yeah. See how God uses circumstances in our life. I think oftentimes we think of formative experiences as you know, the positive things that happen in our life. But certainly in that instance, something tragic, something very negative, something that hit the community, and even the circumstances around it were tragic. And yet God redeemed that, right? And it was an opportunity for you, and it shaped who you are as a leader, and propelled you forward. So thanks for sharing that story. So your entire professional career, I think that's the case. I don't know your story too much before Christian School of York there in central Pennsylvania, but certainly the vast majority of your career has been in Christian K-12 education and biblical higher education. So tell us, why did you choose the field of education?
That is a wonderful question. And I have a 103-year-old pastor friend living in our community who says frequently, it's all by God's grace. Really, I stumbled into education. I thought the Lord was calling my wife, Paulette, and me into foreign missions after we graduated from college in 1973. And the foreign mission agency who we were going to go out under said we had to eliminate our college debt. So that would have taken several years. And in the meantime, the Lord directed our steps from Denver, Colorado to York, Pennsylvania, where I became the head of a K-6 Christian school. And I was able to see it grow to K-12, become fully duly accredited. I was involved in 7 building projects, and it was really a marvelous experience. Our children all went through that school, K-12. And then after 23 years, I went on to biblical higher education in 1998. And this past July 1, 2024, we have served 50 years in education, and it has been the joy and privilege of our lives, Philip.
Yep. Proverbs 16:9, in his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. And you and I have had other conversations that certainly mission field, church work, those were things that you were sensing God's call on your life. And he directed you to education. Peter, how far into your education career did you kind of lock in and say, yeah, you know what, this is something that I enjoy and I want to make it something long term? Was it within the first couple of years, or did it take some time?
Well, certainly when I was in college, I was fond of saying I would do anything but be in education, believe it or not. And then the Lord directed me to the Christian school, and I really enjoyed my experience with the students. It was interesting how I just seemed to bond with the student regardless of their age or background. And from that early days at the Christian school, I felt I would like to do this. And then, of course, the years accumulate and you show up and do your job every day. And pretty soon you're looking back over a 50-year career in education.
Yeah, yeah. How soon into that Christian School of York experience was that fire that you mentioned?
Well, I started in 1975 and the fire was in 1990. So it was 15 years into our experience in our tenure there. We had just completed a brand new building, and it was no more than 1 year old when all 33,000 square feet of that new building burned to the ground. And of course, I like to say that not everyone gets an opportunity to correct all their construction mistakes within 6 months. But
that's one way of doing it. That's one way. It's not something that we suggest that college presidents do, is set fire to their campus buildings. But so I think you already answered this, but maybe go a little bit deeper. Why are you so passionate about education?
Well, I've grown in my passion, Philip, because I've seen the results. I've seen the products of our institutions. And really, the mission statement at the college where I served as president for 23 years had 27 words. And I was fond of saying those are the 27 most dynamic words in higher education, because we have the opportunity, the privilege, the responsibility of ministering, teaching Christian young people and adults to think biblically, to live biblically, and then to live Christ. They can live Christ in the church, and many of our graduates are faithfully serving the Lord around the globe, as you know, and in society. It's so wonderful to see our graduates making an impact, making inroads into the business community. And so we are preparing our students not only for a degree, but all of life, all of living. And it's really like King David or Ruth or Martin Luther or NBA player Steph Curry about finding your part in God's great story. And I believe biblical higher education allows us to do that with our students.
Yeah, yeah. And Peter, having served with you for over those 20 years, one of the things that we would often talk about in our leadership meetings and contexts was that we were a student-focused institution. And I hear that a lot at a number of our institutions. Oh, yeah, we're student-focused. But then you get on the campus and you experience nothing like that. And I would say one of your strongest leadership traits has always been to keep the student in mind. Whether it's a policy, whether it's a program, whether it's a building, whether it's the experience on the campus, it's always centered around the student. And that pays dividends over time.
Yes, I think we always have to put students in the center of all we do. And to expound on that just a moment, I think every student deserves a chance. In fact, I always walked our campus and sat in every leadership meeting as though we were talking about my 4 children. And what would I want an institution to do? How would I like them to be ministered to? How would I like them to be taught if they were my children? And that really keeps a clear perspective and focus on the student. And I have seen too many times where we just become bureaucratic. And there is a place for bureaucracy and process. I full well understand that, but never at the expense of the focus on the student.
Yeah, yeah. You and I have an acquaintance, Nito Kubain, president of High Point University, and we were actually together with him when he told the story when he first came onto the campus of High Point. it was in a less than desirable neighborhood, and safety was a major issue. And his leadership coming in as new president, really hadn't done too much about it. And he told a story where he called a meeting of his leadership on a Friday night at 10 p.m. on the outside of the campus and said, all right, I want you to walk this campus as if it was your daughter, 18-year-old daughter, and let's kind of see how it feels. And as a result of that, they just totally changed the safety issues on their campus. But putting yourself into the shoes of students, imagining that it's your kids around that campus, changes your perspective in all aspects of how you lead.
That is an excellent illustration of being student focused.
Yeah. So recently, Peter, you've written a book. It's titled Jesus Leader, and like I mentioned at the top of the show, it's available, I'm sure, on Amazon or other outlets. So why did you write the book?
Well, thank you for referring to the book, Philip. This is really the fourth book that I have written. And every time you produce something like this, it's like a labor of love. It's very difficult work. It takes discipline. It takes time. And this is really a culmination of my 50 years of experience in Christian leadership and ministry. And I would say that it's been a tremendous journey of learning and growing and reflecting on what it truly means to be a Jesus leader, someone who follows Christ's example in how we live and love others and embodies the leadership qualities he modeled for us. So, in this book, Jesus Leader, I delve into the core character traits and habits of effective Jesus leadership, and I address the pitfalls that can derail even the most well-intentioned leaders. So I address issues like balancing work with family, building a strong and dedicated team, practicing Christian stewardship and fundraising. And the book is really filled with practical tools and wise counsel, really lessons that I have learned, sometimes, most of the time, the hard way through the mistakes that I've made.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea of writing this book, did it, you had been president for a number of years. Was it something that you always wanted, that you knew that you'd be at a point that you wanted to write a book? So you've been kind of collecting your experiences along the way, knowing that was going to lead to a book? Or was it something that kind of emerged well after leaving the presidency?
I would say a little bit of both, Philip.
Okay.
I have always kept records and diaries of thoughts and quotes. And I keep letters. I keep words of counsel and advice from people, friends, mentors over the years. And really, I have separated all of that into 4 categories. And this book, Jesus Leader, is the first of the 4 categories that perhaps someday I will write further on.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. So let's talk a little bit about your leadership career. As you look back at CSY, at Lancaster Bible College, I don't want humility to get in the way of this. I really want you to share from your perspective, what would you say are your top 3 biggest successes or wins in your leadership career?
Well, obviously, I've thought about that topic since I have left the presidency full time. And I would like to be remembered as a bridge builder, Philip. I think today and over my career, I experienced a lot of walls, a lot of denominational walls, life standard walls, code of conduct walls. And we tend to talk over one another. And I really sought early on in my career. And of course, I served in both institutions who were independent. They were not affiliated with a denomination. So I really tried to practice collaboration. And I think creating win-win situations is a wonderful way to go through life. And I believe that would be what Christ would want us to do. So I think that would be perhaps one of the areas that I'm most thankful for. I have learned through an awful lot of my colleagues who I admire so in biblical higher education, that we strive to align the goals of our staff and faculty personally with the goals of our institutions corporately. And when we can align the two, I think that is so important in building community and teamwork and loyalty and longevity. So in order to do that, I think we have to be very, very good listeners. And I learned that you cannot lead people all the same way because each one of us is at a different stage in life with our marriages, with our children, our grandchildren. And it takes a sensitive, I would almost say a pastoral touch to lead a faculty and a staff if you're going to lead with longevity and the intent of really building community into your faculty and staff.
Yeah. So, Peter, there's all kinds of leadership wisdom in all of those pieces that you just mentioned there. And I've often expressed it that, especially within the academy, the relationship between administration and faculty in the best of days, it's fragile. And there are a number of circumstances that contribute to everyone on the team's life, whether it's their marriages, where they are in their careers, where they are health-wise. All of those impact what they bring to the office, to the college campus. And as a leader for those people, you have to understand where they are, because they may respond a certain way that may signal something that I got to dig a little bit deeper with that. Like, why did that person react that way? And like you said, it's pastoral. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of your gifts is you have led well in pastoring people. It takes people in order to get the job done. And you've been a tremendous role model that way. So those are two things. Do you have a third one?
I would say that hiring people makes all the difference. And a college president has an opportunity to hire his or her executive leadership team. And God gave me great favor in hiring people who were so competent and committed and capable. They served on my executive team for many, many years. And I would say that is one of my biggest successes. It really wasn't my leadership as much as it was the team I had around me. And I think for younger leaders listening in today, this is an area where you want to spend an awful lot of your capital and time making sure you have 5-star cabinet officers who will help you lead the institution well.
Yeah. Well said. And one of the practices that you had even within the biblical higher education context, and this is often, I hear this talked about in circles, whether the president ought to be involved in faculty interviews. And I've heard arguments on both sides of that no, you know what, if you've got your team around you, you trust whatever the hire is. But you made it a practice that every single faculty member that was being recommended, you conducted the interview. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, as I look back, I'm glad I did, Philip. I believe the faculty is the heart and soul of the institution. They are the gold in the bank. As the faculty goes, so goes the institution. They must be missional because they carry the mission with them every single day they go into the classroom. So I think it is incumbent upon the very top leadership of the institution to do a thorough interview, give and take, really getting to know the individual, and not always question, but allowing that individual to ask questions of you and the institution. And I wouldn't trade that practice for anything, and I recommend it wholeheartedly to leaders today.
Yeah, it's time well spent for the president to engage in those interviews, because it's a whole lot easier to stop something at that stage than when you've hired them. and what you suspected was an issue becomes an issue on your campus. So the flip side of your 3 successes, no leader is perfect, and you talk about that in your book. In fact, we often learn more from our mistakes than we do our successes. So what are 3 mistakes that you're comfortable sharing about how you've led?
Well, I have 4 in my mind. We'll see if you let me give all 4. The first one is I cheated my family out of quality time. The first 23 years of my ministry career, I was out on average 4 nights a week. So I tell young people following in my footsteps that I did it wrong. Guard your family time. Nothing can take the place of your family. So I live with regrets that I was not at all of the events that I should have been and would have liked to have been for my children as they grew up. That would be my first mistake. Secondly, I am too critical of people. I tend to be very judgmental of people. And I have sometimes a very harsh spirit, expecting too much. I have very high standards with how I use my money and my time and my influence. And I, over the years, expected that same standard or level to be everyone's. And I was very wrong. And I'm so thankful that as I came to the last half of my career, I understood that this was just a wrong lifestyle. So I am trying to be less critical and less judgmental of people. Thirdly, it was hiring people against my gut instinct. I have recorded in my diary about 8 times when we went ahead and hired someone at both institutions, and I had something gnawing at my spirit that wasn't quite right. I went ahead and hired that individual, and sure enough, that individual was not well suited for our institution. So someone told me several years ago that people are mysteries to be explored, not puzzles to be solved. And I don't have to go around figuring out every person's dynamic personality or work schedule or habits or personal life. I am to simply embrace them when they are a part of our institution and allow them to excel at what they do.
So you'll give us a 4th one here, the bonus one, but I want to pause there because it's such an important element of leadership. And I can't remember the author that talked about it, but we're good at having 90% conversations where we talk about everything except for that last little bit that we sense in our heart is a check in our spirit. And oftentimes in my experience, I have discovered that check in my spirit is the Holy Spirit saying, say this, or something just doesn't seem right here. And unfortunately, we don't often have the courage to speak up about that particular concern that we have. And the leadership advice there is clear: to trust that check in your spirit. If you're walking with the Lord, that's how the Lord often communicates with us. Say, something just isn't right here.
You underscore that point very well, Philip. Thank you.
Yeah. So give us the bonus, 4th one.
I was not data-driven enough in my decisions. In looking back, should have been more concerned with some of the indicators that we measure success and failure on, financials, giving records, recruitment, retention. Today, I am so thankful for all the tools that are available to leaders and institutions of biblical higher education, because we do walk by faith and we do trust our instinct, and we also have opportunity to be so much more data-driven than we were when I was in full-time administration. So if I could go back, those are the 4 areas that I would work on much sooner in my life and career, Philip.
Peter, thanks for sharing those and being a bit vulnerable in sharing those. And they shaped who you are as a leader. And you had the perspective of how do I grow from this and become a better leader. So we have our audience. We know that our audience is made up a lot of younger leaders, aspiring leaders who listen to our podcast. What advice would you give them? And you alluded to one piece of advice earlier, but what advice would you give them as they grow in their leadership journeys?
Well, I would say that you have entered the scene at one of the most dynamic times in history. So I am so thankful for emerging leaders in our movement and far beyond. I would suggest that you don't take yourself too seriously. We can all be replaced. I would suggest that you be a good listener. So many of us today don't listen and really get connected heart to heart with the people we lead. Excel in one area. I think it is so important that you master one area that you oversee in your career. You could, if you will, be the expert in that field, whatever that might be. And I would suggest that you always keep a positive attitude and always lean into being a lifelong learner. There is nothing so boring as a leader who has learned everything and knows everything. So maintain your passion. I have a sense of humor that has helped me. I think that's very valuable. And stay focused to the call that God has given you. It is a mighty call. He will enable you, He will equip you, and He will make you successful.
Wow, that's beautiful, Peter. Thanks for sharing that, and you've lived that. And for those of you who don't know Peter well, he does have a very good sense of humor, and oftentimes would take us off guard with it. So we've come to the end here, Peter. One last question: as you think about all of biblical higher education, you have been a leader who has just given so much of who you are. What's one last word of encouragement that you'd like to leave with us?
We are serving a dynamic generation. They are so transparent. They want to make their lives count for Christ. They want to give themselves to a cause greater than us. And I suggest that we always maintain high expectations of them. And I often remind myself that our work is eternal because our work has names attached to it. So this is a wonderful time to be involved in ministry and to see lives change day by day.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Peter. Really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, experiences, and pulling back the curtain and letting us see you as a leader. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Philip. It's been a great privilege visiting with you today. God bless you.
Absolutely. And if you'd like more information about Peter's new book, Jesus Leader, in the show description, we've put a link there for you to go to Amazon. You can purchase that. And I'm sure if you brought it to an annual meeting and sought out Peter, he'd even sign the copy of the book for you. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.